Some houses do not fall because of storms or neglect. They fall because the thing holding them together was already dying long before anyone arrived to witness it. There are places that feel wrong before you can explain why. Not dangerous exactly, not visibly ruined, but heavy, as though the air itself has thickened with something older than weather. You arrive, and before a single word is spoken, your body understands what your mind has not yet admitted. Something here has been failing for a very long time. Edgar Allan Poe published The Fall of the House of Usher in 1839. It is one of the most celebrated stories in the English language, and one of the most misunderstood. It is often shelved as horror. It is often read as a ghost story. But the fear at the center of this tale is not supernatural. It is the fear that decay can become so total, so deeply woven into a place and a bloodline and a mind that no part of the structure can be saved. Not the walls, not the family, not the self. What Poe understood, and what still makes this story quietly terrifying, is that the most frightening collapse is not the one that comes from outside. It is the one that has been underway for generations, invisible and patient, until the moment when everything gives way at once. The story is told by an unnamed narrator who has received a letter from his boyhood friend, Roderick Usher. The letter is desperate and strange. Roderick writes of a nervous agitation, a mental disorder, a bodily illness he cannot name. He asks his old companion to come and stay with him. He believes that the company of a friend might do what medicine has not. The narrator rides through a landscape that grows steadily more desolate as he approaches, and then he sees the house. It is not a ruin, not quite. The walls still stand, the structure holds, but the narrator is struck immediately by a feeling he struggles to articulate, a sense of insufferable gloom. The windows are like vacant eyes. The stonework is discolored and draped in fungi. A barely visible fissure runs from the roof in a zigzag line, down through the front wall and disappears into the dark waters of the tarn below. Poe describes this crack almost casually, but it is the most important detail in the story. The house is already split. The fracture is already there. It simply has not finished its work. Inside, the narrator finds Roderick Usher in a state that is difficult to define as either illness or madness. He is gaunt, pale, and trembling. His senses have become intolerably acute. Certain textures cause him pain. Most food is inedible to him. The faintest light hurts his eyes, and only the softest sounds can be borne. He lives in dim rooms, wrapped in silence, a man whose own nervous system has turned against him. But Roderick insists that his condition is not simply medical. He tells the narrator that he suffers from a constitutional and family evil, an inherited affliction that cannot be separated from the family line. The Ushers have always been this way. One unbroken chain of descent, no branches, no outside marriage, each generation feeding the next the same fragile temperament until fragility has become the entire structure. Poe is doing something radical here for a writer of his era. He is suggesting that identity is not stable, that the self is not a freestanding thing, built fresh in each life, but something inherited, shaped by blood, by walls, by the accumulated atmosphere of a place. Roderick does not simply live in the House of Usher. He is the House of Usher. The family name applies to both the building and the bloodline. The locals have always used the phrase to mean both. And Poe wants us to understand that this is not a coincidence. It is the point. There is another Usher. Roderick has a twin sister, Madeline. She drifts through the house like a figure already half departed from the living world. She suffers from a wasting illness that the physicians cannot explain. Cataleptic episodes in which her body falls into the appearance of death, unresponsive, rigid, and still. The narrator catches only glimpses of her, passing through distant corridors, never speaking, never fully present. Madeline and Roderick are the last of the line. When they die, the family ends. And Poe makes it clear that this ending is not a future possibility. It is already happening. The family is not declining. It has declined. What remains is the final tremor before the stillness. The narrator tries to occupy Roderick's time. They paint together, they read, they play music. Roderick creates strange, abstract paintings, formless vaults and tunnels lit from within, and composes a ballad about a once beautiful palace that falls to evil, its windows becoming red-lit eyes and its harmonious inhabitants replaced by something shapeless laughing behind the doors. It is not subtle. Roderick is describing his own house, his own mind, his own disintegration. The song he writes about a ruined palace is the story he is living, and the narrator hears it and feels the unease deepen, but cannot quite face what it means. Then Madeline dies, or appears to die. Roderick announces her death with a strange composure, and he makes a decision that the narrator finds unsettling, but does not challenge. He wishes to preserve her body temporarily in a vault beneath the house, a deep, copper-lined chamber that once served as a dungeon before final burial. He gives medical reasons. He speaks of the peculiar nature of her illness, of unscrupulous physicians who might wish to examine the body. The narrator helps him carry her down. They screw the lid of the coffin shut. They close the heavy iron door of the vault, and as they do, the narrator notices something he will not be able to forget. A faint blush lingers on Madeline's face. Her lips carry the faintest suggestion of a smile. She is not dead. Some part of the narrator knows this. Some part of Roderick knows it too, but they seal the vault anyway. This is the moment at which Poe's story shifts from atmosphere into something approaching genuine dread. Because what is buried here is not only Madeline, it is the knowledge of what they have done. It is the act of repression made literal, the thing that cannot be faced, locked beneath the floor, in a room with copper walls that will not let the sound escape. In the days that follow, Roderick deteriorates rapidly. His agitation becomes something beyond nervousness. He paces. He stares at nothing. His skin grows paler. The narrator begins to feel the contagion of the house himself, a creeping, formless dread that he cannot attribute to any rational cause. He sleeps badly. He hears sounds he cannot explain. Poe is careful to leave the source of the dread ambiguous. Is it the house? Is it guilt? Is it some sentient malice in the family itself, pressing down on the last of the bloodline? The story refuses to choose, and that refusal is part of its power. The boundaries between mind, body, and architecture have dissolved. On the final night, a storm arrives. Not a natural storm, or at least, not only a natural storm. The narrator sees a luminous gas surrounding the house, clinging to its walls like breath. The tarn glows. The clouds move in directions that have nothing to do with the wind. He tries to calm Roderick by reading aloud from a romance, a story within a story about a knight forcing his way into a hermit's dwelling. As he reads, each action in the tale is answered by a sound from within the house. A cracking, a ripping, a grating. The narration and reality merge. Roderick breaks. He has been listening, not to the reading, but to the sounds beneath it. He turns to the narrator with an expression of frozen terror and speaks the words that are the climax of the entire story. He says that he has heard her, for days, scratching at the copper walls of the vault, tearing at the lid of the coffin. He heard her, and he did not open the door. He knew, he has known since they carried her down. She was alive when they sealed her in, and he let it happen. Whether from fear, from paralysis, from some deeper impulse towards self-destruction that runs through the family like a crack through stone, he chose not to act. And then the doors of the chamber fly open. Madeline stands in the doorway, blooded, white-robed, swaying. She has fought her way out of the coffin, out of the vault, up through the passages of the house. She does not speak. She falls upon her brother, and Roderick, receiving her weight, dies. The narrator flees. He runs from the house into the storm, and as he turns back, he watches the fissure, that thin crack that ran from roof to foundation, widen. The walls shudder. The house splits apart along the line that was always there and collapses into the tarn. The dark water closes over it without a sound. What collapses is not simply a building. It is an entire system of denial. The ushers kept their lines sealed. No new blood, no outside influence, no disruption to the pattern. And the pattern, left to repeat without interruption, consumed itself. The house, the family, and the minds within it became one closed loop, each reflecting the other's deterioration, until no boundary remained between structure and inhabitant, between living and dead, between repression and the thing repressed. Poe understood something that modern psychology would later struggle to articulate, that inheritance is not only genetic, it is atmospheric. A house carries the habits of its occupants, a family carries the silences of its ancestors, and when a system becomes closed, when nothing new enters, when nothing buried is allowed to surface, it does not stabilize, it decays. Roderick's hypersensitivity is not incidental to the story. It is the story. He can feel everything, every vibration of the walls, every shift in the air, every movement beneath the floor. He is a man so attuned to his environment that he can no longer distinguish himself from it. The house hurts because he hurts. He hurts because the house is failing. There is no outside. There is no escape from the feedback loop. There is only the collapse. The question the story asks and deliberately refuses to answer is whether any of this is supernatural. Did the house have a sentient malice? Did Madeline return through some Gothic resurrection? Or is the entire tale the account of a man watching another man's mental disintegration in a crumbling estate, narrating what he half understands and half invents? Poe leaves it unresolved because the resolution does not matter. The horror of the story does not depend on whether the house was literally alive or Madeline literally undead. It depends on the recognition that collapse, personal, familial, architectural, follows the same pattern regardless of its cause. The fissure was always there. The burial was always premature. The return was always inevitable. What endures in this story, nearly 2 centuries after it was written, is not its Gothic atmosphere, though that atmosphere remains extraordinary. It is the idea at its core that some forms of ruin are not events, they are inheritances, that a family can pass down not only wealth and features, but exhaustion, fear, and the particular quality of its silence, that a house can become so saturated with the lives it has contained that it begins to behave like a mind, holding things in, refusing to let go, cracking under the pressure of what it will not release. Poe did not write a ghost story. He wrote a story about what happens when every wall, physical, psychological, familial, is the same wall, and what happens when it falls.